Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. In this hour, ladies and gentlemen, I decided not to have a guest, so it's just going to be you and we're going to talk about what's going on in America now and how great this country is and what can be done about the problems that we're having in the country. But before we go there, let's talk about war first. As General Sherman wrote the White House, this was during the Civil War, and he said war is hell. And I read a few things about what went on during the Civil War. And I'm thinking, has the mentality of people really changed with the introduction of modern things? Has the civilization really changed a lot when it comes to how we look at war and how we accept war and what happens during the war? As most of us, we studied American history, and as most of you out there, we very much, learned that the Civil War basically was so Lincoln wanted to free the slaves, and that's what a lot of people out there, at least that's how it was sold, probably at that time or later, that the Civil War. And I'm not really sure. Maybe some of the history teachers out there can call me and set me straight on this one. I'm not really sure why we call it Civil War either. The North basically invaded the South and occupied it, and it became, of course, it was the United States of America before, the 13 colonies, etc., etc., and then we had what we call the Civil War. Was it really a civil war? And if it was a civil war, I'm assuming it's the same people. When you have civil war, it's the same country, the same people. And I'm wondering when General Sherman went into Atlanta and basically burnt the whole city, is that somebody who is fighting? When you destroy a whole city, is that somebody who's destroying an enemy city? If it was an enemy city, why we call it Civil War? And also when Sheridan went to the valley, the Shenandoah Valley, and basically burned the cities of Harrisonburg and Bridgewater, where a lot of the women and children were left behind after their husbands were at the front fighting the federal troops. The Confederacy men were at the battle, and Sheridan went to the valley and basically burnt these two cities, among other cities like Dayton, for instance, and killed all these women and children. Was that like a tactic for the war? How would you look at that? Would killing women and children would be considered as a terrorism act, which brings the terrorism word into what we're talking about? And so I'm just wondering, war is hell. And, President Grant, as a matter of fact, sent a letter to Sheridan basically telling him to burn the valley, that even a crow flying over the valley will have to bring its own rations or carry its own rations. And the federal troops basically burnt farm animals, barns, buildings. Basically, a lot of destruction took place. And then after that, we had the First World War and then the Second World War. And in the Second World War, I'm thinking, when the Allied forces with B-29 bombers, American bombers, when they destroyed the city of Dresden, for instance, in Germany, and killed hundreds of thousands of people, basically dropped 650,000 pounds of bombs on that city at a time when about 1 million refugees, German refugees who were fleeing the Russian invasion to their country, they basically went into Dresden, and then the Allies made the decision to basically bomb the town, the city of Dresden, and killed hundreds of thousands of people, which was a systematic, in my opinion, it was systematic killing of civilians. As Churchill put it, he wanted a lot of people in the streets to block the German army from going to support other troops, so other German troops outside the city. And so is anything legal in war? Is everything okay to do in war, killing civilians? It's okay. And you know what we have done? A week after Dresden, we went to Tokyo, Japan, and we did very much the same thing. As a matter of fact, in Dresden, people's shoes were melting off of their feet because it was so hot. And in Japan, in Tokyo, the lakes around Tokyo were boiling. That's how much heat and that's how much, fuel and bombs we dumped on the city. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, look what they did in Pearl Harbor. Definitely, I agree with you. That was a horrendous act. But in Pearl Harbors, it was what you call the military, the Navy. But then we go to Tokyo, and don't forget the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bombs that we dumped on those two cities. We are the only country in the world to have used a nuclear bomb. But, the question that I'm putting out there is, during war, is it okay to kill civilians for political or military reasons? Tell me what you think. If you think it's okay, for the Federalists or the federal troops to kill men and women, to kill women and children and burn Atlanta and kill and destroy these two towns. Of course, there's a lot of more towns that were destroyed and burnt, but especially Bridgewater and Harrisonburg, where mainly women and children left behind. And to have a letter sent by Lincoln to Sherman thanking him and saying, the nation thanks you, I'm just wondering, we're sending the same thing to our generals in Iraq. We have destroyed about 650,000 civilians died in Iraq because of our bombs, because of what we had done to the country of Iraq. And we're saying we have done that in the name of democracy, to bring democracy to the Iraqis. We want to free the Iraqis. Is freeing people mean we have to kill half of them to free the rest? Is civilian killing and targeting civilians to systematically kill civilians, is that okay in your dictionary? Or, as Sheridan wrote the White House and said, war is hell? Can anything go? Because remember, we do have a Geneva Convention that basically was after the war. These people sat down and put some rules. And some of these rules that you cannot kill civilians. But, I don't know. I'm going to the phones with Curtis. Go ahead, Curtis.
Hey, Dr. Tillawi, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fine, thank you.
Sorry to put your guest earlier on the spot, but
not at all. George can handle it.
Yeah, okay. Anybody that comes on current issues can't expect current issues callers to lob softballs like they do on CNN.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. Where is America today? I just wanted to say that, in my humble opinion, America is merely a shell of what it once was. And from my point of view, this has a lot to do with the fact that we are today led by Zionists.
Okay.
And I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that there is a program out there like Current Issues that I can tune into and watch and hear some truth at least once a week, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Curtis. Thanks for the call. Okay. It was a French philosopher or writer, Alex de Tocqueville, I think. Maybe I'm not reading the last name right. But he did write about the greatness of America. And just to paraphrase, basically, and by the way, there are some researchers who are saying that he did not say this. But regardless if he said it or not, basically what it boils down to is he was saying that America is great, and its greatness because of its great people. And once this greatness ceases to exist, America ceases to exist. So basically, it's not the greatness of our government, but it's the greatness of our people. And that's basically when I said, is America great? That's exactly what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about, is our country great? Because you know what? Everybody, including me, wants their country to be the greatest country in the world. And I still say that America is the greatest country in the world because of its people, because of the humbleness of its people. And I am so proud to call myself an American, and I'm so proud to have the values of America, the values that were instated or reinstated in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights. But you know, how great you are is not how great you think you are. Because everyone can take a look at themselves in the mirror and say how great I am. But it's actually how other people see you. That's how great you are. And how other people see us as a nation, that's how great we are as a country and as a nation and as a people. So how great are we? It's how other people think how great we are. Going to the phones with Freedom. Good, Freedom?
Okay, Dr. Tillawi, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Look, man, I'm in a quagmire here because the only people who seem to be great are the people who call up Sean Hannity's show and say, Sean, you're a great American, and then Sean Hannity tells them they're a great American. But if you complain about the country like you do, like I do, like Tom does on his show, for some reason we are not great Americans if we just don't accept what the administration is doing. I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
For the past few weeks now, the president has sent in two carrier groups in the Persian Gulf, as you know, the Eisenhower and the Stennis Battle Group. They both have aircraft carriers with them and whatnot. Now, George Bush said in an interview with NPR's Juan Williams that if Iran does anything, send any men over the border, Iran and Syria, that apparently we will attack Iran, and we have some people from Israel here now in discussions with our Pentagon. Will this be a joint attack on Iran, and what will happen if George Bush is stupid enough to do that without an act of Congress? And thanks, Dr. Tillawi.
Sure, thank you. Well, the Iranian issue is a little bit difficult to even comprehend. I'm having difficult time comprehending the Iranian positions. I can tell you one thing. Iran has always looked after Iran. What is good for Iran? There is a film festival that will take place in Iran next month, I believe. And one of the participants is an Israeli filmmaker, and he was shocked when he received the invitation to attend the festival, the film festival that's going to take place in Iran. And the reason he was shocked because his films are mainly pro-Zionist, pro-Israelis, and not pro-Palestinians. And you start thinking, what is Iran trying to do here? You know, are they trying to basically offset some of this pressure that was put on them because of the Holocaust conference? And what is Iran doing in Iraq? Because definitely some Iranians were arrested in Iraq. Iran is a supporter of a Shiite government in Iraq. Iran was a supporter of attacking Saddam and destroying Iraq. So the Shiites in Iraq can be in control of Iraq as we see it now. So is that good for Iran? Of course it's good for Iran. Now, why the United States have allowed this situation to happen, we've talked about this, that nothing in Iraq and us going to Iraq and attacking Iraq, nothing in that formula there had anything to do with us as the United States, as our vital interest. It was not. It definitely against our vital interest, because Iraq, and I've said this so many times, Iraq went to war against Iran for 8 years to basically protect our interest, because after the Khomeini regime, the revolution, after the Islamic revolution in Iran, basically we did not, as Americans, we did not want this revolution to spill over to other countries in the Middle East. That's why we had Saddam go and basically start a war with Iraq. Now the situation is a little bit different. Now we have Iranian missiles, Iranian guns, and Iranian bombs, and Iranian military hardware that we are finding in Iraq. So Iran definitely is sending the resistance, or the Mahdi army, the Shiites, the al-Sadr army. Definitely they are helping. It's very complicated, because if we go and attack Iran, then we are going to make it hell for our troops in Iraq. And we just sent in another 21,000 to control, and as the president put it, excuse me, as the president put it, to secure the population. Now yesterday they killed 300. They're saying 250 of them from the Mahdi army, which is the al-Sadr, Muqtada Sadr group. And if we are sending all these troops there to control and secure the population, that means we are going to see a lot more people dying. And we're basically going from fighting an army to fighting like the resistance. We are going after them with small groups, just like what we are doing. We're using their tactics. Now, that will never work. That will never work. What we are about to do is basically kill a lot of Iraqis. And after killing a lot of Iraqis, we're going to sit back and say, you know what? These 20,000, nothing happened even after we sent 20,000. Are we going to attack Iran? I think Iran is backing off a little bit from the threats and from the high language and the high pitch that they were using, and trying to basically calm down the situation and say, okay, let's talk. Because there are a lot of voices in Iran also against what's happening. They don't want the United States to attack Iran, and Ahmadinejad has some opposition right now in Iran, and nothing would be better for Ahmadinejad, for the president of Iran, than the United States attacking his country, so he can basically gather more support from these hesitant people in Iran once he's attacked. So an attack on Iran will be good for Ahmadinejad, but of course it will not be good for Iran, and it will not be good for the United States either. But the question that if we do, who would it be good for? Well, this whole thing was set up so it can be good for Israel. And there was an article in The Nation that I'm going to go through in a little bit that will shed more light on exactly what is going on in Iraq. Why did we go there to start with? And if we go and attack Iran, it will only be another step or the next step in this long plan to destroy the Middle East so Israel can be the only superpower in the Middle East. Again, it's an excellent article that was published in The Nation. We will go through this after I take this phone call. But if we do attack Iran, it will be because Israel wants us to attack Iran. And what I'm thinking might even happen, and probably within the next week or 2 weeks, I'm thinking if something is going to happen, it's going to happen like the first couple of weeks in February, that Israel might actually attack Iran, which will definitely will bring us into a war with Iran. Now, a war with Iran is not going to be something that we are going to send troops in, but we are going to bomb the heck out of Iran, and basically that will be the end of Iran. I don't think Iranians is a match for us, the United States, but I can tell you one thing, that if we send in ground troops to Iran, it is going to be a totally different story from Iraq. In Iraq, we were able to divide the country into 3 main major parts. We're not going to be successful in Iran, and we're not going to be successful as we were in Iraq at basically fueling the violence between the sectarian violence between the Shiites and the Sunnis. We're not going to be able to do that in Iran because it's a totally different picture, even though there is more than just one. There are sectors in Iran too, but the majority are Shiites in Iran, so we're not going to be as successful. Now, we can do what you're seeing right now on the screen, bomb the heck out of it, just like we did in Baghdad. That's basically what we have done in Baghdad, and that's, the results of why 650,000 Iraqis have, civilians have died in that war. Let me go to the phones with James. Go ahead, James.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, you're on.
Well, yes, Mr. Tillawi, you said a while ago that they're finding some weapons that come from Iran.
Yes.
How sure are you that those weapons come from Iran?
How sure?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Now, the White House was going to show some evidence that there are weapons that came from Iran, and I guarantee you, there are weapons that came from Iran. I mean, let's not be blind about the situation that's going on there. I mean, I recognize that there's an accent there. You're probably Iranian and probably took offense to what I said, but I'm not sure. I didn't see any evidence, if that's what you're asking me. But I can tell you, looking at what's going on in Iran, in Iraq, and looking at who Iran is supporting in Iraq, I can tell you, I mean, it's a wide border. And, who's arming the Mahdi army? Can you tell me? Where are they getting their guns?
Could be coming from America.
The Mahdi army's guns coming from America?
They there could be like those bombs that destroys those roadside bombs. Why, if that's so, why didn't the Palestinians have those road bombs? How come they're just popping up now?
Well, because the Palestinians don't have. How are they going to get that into Palestine?
Well, it could be coming from Iran.
How?
Well, I don't know.
There's a big border between Iran and Iraq, and there's a huge distance between Iran and Palestine. So how could the Iranians, if they want to send arms to the Palestinians, how are they going to get it over there? There's no border, but there's a huge border between Iraq and Iran that some weapons could be going into the Mahdi army from the Iranians, because they are very much aligned with with Iran. And that's the tragedy in Iraq, that because of these big chunks in the population, they were able to basically split the Iraqis from being one people into actually 4 different people now, because the Shiites themselves are divided almost in half, with some who are aligned with Iran and some who are not. So, but I mean, I'm trying to get to your point. What is your point?
Well, my point is, my first question was, how sure are you that those weapons are coming from Iran?
Okay. And what is the point of that question, if I'm honest?
Well, if they're saying on the news that those weapons are coming from Iran, is to know if it's really coming from Iran.
Okay. And if they're lying, why would they be lying?
God knows.
Okay.
But did they lie about everything else?
Well, that is true. That is true. That is true. Appreciate it, James. Thanks. James raises a good question, and actually, as a matter of fact, some of these weapons. Now, do I know for a fact that there are weapons coming from Iran to Iraq? No, I'm not there, and I'm not sitting in front of a camera with the satellites, but we're having that border, that huge border between Iran and Iraq, and having the Mahdi army being... you've seen a couple of years after we went to Iraq, we went in there and basically confiscated the weapons that the Mahdi army had. That's Muqtada Sadr group. And you probably remember seeing on TV the huge piles of guns that were confiscated. But right now, the Mahdi army is basically what's ruling. There's a big war going on right now as we speak between the United States and the so-called Iraqi army units against Muqtada Sadr group. If that's the people that we basically confiscated their guns 2 years ago, how in the heck do they have these sophisticated weapons now? How are they using these same weapons to basically pierce through armored vehicles? Where are they coming from? If they're not coming from Iran, they're coming from somewhere. Are we, the United States, are we arming the Mahdi army so we can create and wreak havoc in Iraq? I don't know. Anything can go, like Sherman said, war is hell, and anything in war can happen. Now, definitely, the policy was not to bring democracy to Iraq, but basically to split Iraq into these sectarian violence. Now, the article that I told you about in The Nation, it basically, we started talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, 4 years ago. And now the mainstream media is finally beginning to see what we were saying. Listen to this. This is an article written by Robert Dreyfuss. The title of the article is Agent of Influence. It was written, published January 20th. in the nation. Did Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, run a covert program with operatives in high-level U.S. government positions to influence the Bush administration's decision to go to war in Iraq? The FBI wants to know. That's the story behind the latest Washington spy scandal involving Israel. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, and a mid-level civilian Pentagon employee allegedly caught red-handed trying to deliver United States secrets to the Israelis. It is not a routine spy case. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the FBI is looking at a group of new conservatives who have occupied senior posts at the White House, the Pentagon, and the Vice President Cheney's office. It is not that they are supporters of Israel. No crime there. So supporting Israel is not a crime. But that some of them might be conspirators in a clandestine operation launched by Sharon's Likud party. They make up the very network of ideologues, from civilians at the Defense Department to fellow travelers at right-wing think tanks, who have been accused of pushing George W. Bush into war. The point of the probe, sources believe, is not to examine the push to war, but rather to ascertain whether Sharon recruited or helped place in office people who knowingly and secretly worked with him to affect the direction of United States policy in the Middle East. The most likely targets of the inquiry are Douglas Feith, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and Harold Rode of the Pentagon's Office of Net Assessment. It's an explosive inquiry and one that raises the most sensitive hackles, since it involves the possibility that United States officials, most but not all Jews, are working on Sharon's behalf. They include Feith, which is Douglas Feith, and a handful of other officials, including those in the inner circle of this policy office, who formed the core of the Office of Special Plans. The probe faces stiff political resistance, of course, because now you are trying to investigate what some Zionists have done. Yet it may have legs, and it should have legs to walk and even run, and run fast, into getting these people into a court of law to answer about this treacherous act that they have done against the United States and into taking the United States into a war that is only good for Israel. That's not the article, that's me. The investigation burst into the news in late August when CBS News reported that the FBI had caught a Feith staffer, later identified as Larry Franklin. They say in last August. We talked about Larry Franklin 3 years ago, not just last August. Okay, but I'm glad that it got thus far. Trying to deliver that what turned out to be a classified draft of presidential memo on Iran to AIPAC and an Israeli embassy diplomat. Subsequent attention focused largely on whether Franklin was a spy for Israel, but in fact he is only a minor figure in a far more sweeping probe that began 2 years ago. What triggered the original investigation isn't known, but it is known that it began at a critical moment as Feith and Rode began assembling a team which included Franklin to form the Office of Special Plan. It's been widely reported that the Office of Special Plans manufactured exaggerated intelligence reports on the threat from Iraq, but less reported is the fact that the Office of Special Plans also carried out unauthorized operations. Several Office of Special Plans officials, including Rode, Franklin, and Michael Maloof, one of the two original staffers of the forerunners to the OSP, joined by Michael Ledeen of the American Enterprise Institute, took part in a rogue Pentagon initiative beginning in 2001 with unsavory wheelers dealers in Rome and Paris to discuss regime change beyond Iraq, in Iran and Syria. This was before September 11th. You see, most of you agreed that we go to war against Saddam Hussein because of 9/11. But these people planned before 9/11 and what they wanted to do, which is to remove Saddam Hussein from power. Officials familiar with the case stressed that the FBI is looking at an operation run by the Israeli Prime Minister, not by the Mossad, that's the Israeli intelligence agency, and that the investigation is based solely on concerns about foreign influence. It's about Sharon, says a former senior CIA operations officer. This has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. But of course, definitely, they will use this super weapon that they have, that this investigation is anti-Semitism, that they're coming after us because we're Jews. Anti-Semitism. They have labeled Jimmy Carter, a man who has done so much for the Jews and the Jewish people in Israel. They labeled him anti-Semitic because he criticized what they did and what they're doing. Now, definitely, charges of anti-Semitism is going to be raised in this issue because most of them are Jews and most of them were and still are in sensitive positions within our government. Some familiar with the case suggest that the FBI's investigation is looking back as far as 1996 when Richard Perle, Fight's boss at the Pentagon, that's Richard Perle in the 1980s, and until recently chairman of the Pentagon's Defense Policy Board, and David Wormser, a co-founder of the Office of Special Plans, who is now Cheney's Middle East advisor, wrote a radical memo called A Clean Break. We talked about clean break for the last 4 years. The mainstream media did not talk about it, but I'm glad to see that it's beginning to get out there. What is a clean break strategy for securing the realm? Well, it was a policy that was written by Douglas Feith, Richard Perle, Paul Wolfowitz, David Wormser, and others who are mainly Jewish, but also to add to them, Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney was involved in all this. They're going to go back, and I'm glad to see them going back to 1996 because that's when the clean break document was written by these people and given to then Prime Minister Netanyahu. And basically it says in that document that Israel's strategy should be to take out Saddam Hussein from power, destroy Iraq, split it into 3 different countries, weak countries, so Israel can be the superpower, the regional superpower in there. They wrote this back in 1996, and in 2000, now there are other documents, I'm just going to mention some of these names, and you can go and look it up on the internet, or actually you can go on our website. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago that kind of puts all this together. You can go and see it on our website, www.currentissues.tv, and just click on read Hisham's latest articles, and you will see what I'm talking about in details. There were 4 documents that I have discussed in that article. One of them was written in early 80s. It's called Israel's Strategy for Israel in the 1980s, where they said we need to destroy the Arab countries from within. There are fault lines in every Arab country. Like for instance, Iraq, you have Sunnis and Shiites, and you have Kurds and Arabs. We need to go in there and create a problem between these people, then we're going to take Lebanon, has the same problem, Syria has the same problem, Sudan has the same problem. And what is going on now in all these places? Sudan, probably they want to split it into 4 different countries. Remember that Darfur and all these problems, and the south and the east. Saudi Arabia have some problems too, and they are working on creating this sectarian so they can control these countries. That was written back in the 1980s by Israel. Then we have in 1996, actually in 1992, we have the Defense Guidance Policy, which was written by Richard Perle and Paul Wolfowitz under Dick Cheney when he was the Defense Secretary for Bush the father. And then in 1996 they wrote the Clean Break document, and then in 2000 they wrote the new project, a project for a new American century, which basically says, you see, they couldn't sell the Clean Break document to then President Clinton, but they came up in 2000 with another document, which is the Project for a New American Century. And in that project is very much what it had in the Israeli plan, but now they kind of tailored it to fit the American psyche, which is we need to go there, we are the superpower, we need to control our oil, we need to defend our oil, we need to do this, and we need to do that. All of these documents are on the internet. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to the future of your children to go and see why we went to war against Iraq. So now, the plan was, these people who wrote the plan way back and could not execute the plan because the political environment in the country was not ripe enough for them. But when George Bush, the son, who thinks of himself as the Holy Ghost too, when he took power, all these people became in positions of policy and decisions. Dick Cheney became vice president. Rumsfeld became the defense secretary. Richard Perle, Rumsfeld, he was on the chairman of the policy board, the defense policy board. Paul Wolfowitz, undersecretary of defense. Douglas Feith, they put him in charge of this office that manufactured all the evidence to go to war, like the Niger yellow cake, for some of you who still remember the yellow cake issue. All these people, amongst others, we don't have much time to go through them, but amongst others, they became in controlling and executory positions, which is to decide what we do. And we went to war against Iraq. We destroyed the country. Nothing in it for us. We are spending $8 billion a month on this war. We have lost, the official count is more than 3,060 some, or probably more. For what? To accomplish what? We are going to end up, after years in Iraq, we're going to end up coming back, accomplishing 0 for us, 100% for Israel. 0 for us. As a matter of fact, if it was 0 for us, I would be happy. We will be in the hole. Right now, it's about $6 trillion. $6 trillion. If you know what a trillion is, do you know what a billion is? Go look it up so you'll know what a trillion is, and you will know what $8 billion that we are spending in Iraq, what it would do in this country. You can't even support your family on the salary that you are. Before the war, you were okay. Now, what we keep showing you here, put that picture back. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the latest invention of our military. This is a regular Humvee. You've seen them all the time. But what they have on top, this thing will create so much heat that it will melt people in front of it. This is now they did try this a couple of weeks ago, and it works fine. They're going to use it to mainly two things. They're going to put it in the battlefield to basically burn the other people. If they are in a house, if they are wherever they are, this thing it will create so much heat that it will melt people. And also you can regulate the heat where you will be used for crowd control. And that's what really this was designed for, is for crowd control. Now, the question is, crowd control for what? Are they expecting the American people to go out in the streets against them, demanding that these people that we named here tonight, and that this article that was published in The Nation named, are they expecting that the American people are going to go out in the streets asking and demanding that these people be brought to justice? I don't know. But let's go to the phones with Lewis. Go ahead, Lewis.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
What is it?
Go ahead.
I'm Lewis. I called in earlier and I've been sitting here waiting.
Yes, sir. You're on now.
Okay.
You're on. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Lewis.
Yes.
You know me.
I know you very well.
And you asked the question a while ago as to where they got their arms from.
Yes.
There had never been an army. I'm a history buff. There had never been a conquering army who allowed the enemy to keep their weapons. The weapons they have are the weapons they had before we got there, and we sat right there and allowed them to keep all their explosives, all their guns. Just think what would have happened to us in World War II had we allowed the Japanese and the Italians and the Germans to keep their weapons. If people would go back and look at the films of that thing where these people came out with snow on the ground, with no clothes on from the waist up, and all their guns stacked. The Germans, Italians, and Japanese were not allowed to keep their weapons. These people we have, Runfield and his bunch, allowed those people to keep all their weapons, all their explosives, their hand grenades, their missiles, you name it. And now we wonder where they are getting their weapons from. They got them. They kept them from what they had.
Okay. Now, how do you explain, Lewis, how do you explain some of these new weapons?
The new weapons they got? The new weapons they got, you can buy weapons on the American market, the American government.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm still here. We furnished all the weapons over there for the people in Pakistan to fight against Russia, and they got all the weapons that we furnished them are still there. All these missiles, handheld missiles, we furnished them all.
Okay.
They don't need to get them anywhere else, and you can buy arms on the market from anybody you want. Not that it's particularly supplied by anybody. It's just that we allowed it to happen. We should have never allowed the Iraqis to keep anything.
Lewis, why did we go to Iraq? Why did we go to war against Iraq?
We went to Iraq to finish something that Bush's daddy started and didn't complete. And we went in for big oil, is what we went in for.
Was anyone depriving us of that oil before, Lewis?
That's all we went in for, was for big oil.
But the oil, okay, I don't accept that argument, because we were paying a hell of a lot less for oil, and no one has, from the Middle East, no one have deprived us of oil. Even Saddam Hussein, when he was in power and he was under embargo, we got 15% of our oil right here in the United States from Saddam Hussein.
Yes, and then who owned the oil in Iraq?
But right now, it does not, okay, you said oil, but you're not really qualifying that answer with anything.
What I'm qualifying the answer for is who owned the oil in Iraq before this war?
The Iraqi government.
The Iraqi government.
Okay.
Who is going to end up right now under our occupation forces owning the oil in Iraq?
Well, so is that okay? Well, that goes back to how great a country are we. It's okay to go to your neighbors and steal their property?
Right. That's what is happening over there to those people. We have gone in to be able to control the oil flow out of Iraq, which before We did not control the oil flow out of Iraq.
Okay.
And that's the same thing happening in Iran. We do not control the oil flow out of Iran.
Okay. Appreciate it, Lewis.
And the arms they're using over there, we furnished all those arms.
Okay.
Our American people paid
Very good. Lewis.
all the arms that they have.
I appreciate your call. Unfortunately, we're going to have to go and have to leave it at there. Thanks. Appreciate your call. Tom, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, hi. Something I wanted to ask you about or comment on was Jimmy Carter's come out with a new book.
Yes.
About referring to Israel's treatment of the Palestinians as apartheid, and
right.
He spoke at Brandeis University, and he's
right.
been called an anti-Semite, and
right.
on and on and on. But Carter was the one that really opened up the dialogue with the Arabs when he was president.
Oh, definitely.
And I want to bring up what Lewis is talking about, the oil that Carter doctrine about access to oil, that if you tamper or interfere with our access to oil in the Persian Gulf, then you're tampering with our security.
But Tom, no one was tampering with our oil. You know, that mysteriously went underneath the Arab sands. No one was tampering with it because Carter himself, actually, when he was in power, Carter has done a lot. One of it is the Carter Doctrine.
Right.
And the Carter Doctrine basically told the world, listen, oil in the Middle East is a vital interest of the United States. And if anyone tries to control it, we will, even if we have to use arms, we will remove that influence from there. So everyone in the world understood that perfectly. So who was threatening our oil that we had to go and destroy Iraq for, even though we were getting Iraqi oil, even under the embargo that we had placed on them after the first Gulf War? Very quickly, we have 10 seconds.
Well, no, I just want to say that what about OPEC? We can't be held hostage by a group of people that don't like the United States to say, well, we're going to cut off or we're going to reduce our supply of oil.
They're not.
Pardon me?
They're not. Believe me, the OPEC countries, they would love to sell. They have oil.
Okay.
They have a product. They want to sell it to the highest bidder. And also, none of these countries will dare take an action like that because we will wipe them out. I got to go, Tom.
All right.
Thanks. Curtis, a few seconds left. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had to call when I heard the caller earlier saying that he was in Iraq for oil, and I just had to point out to your viewers that in South Africa produces oil from coal for about $18 a barrel, and the United States has the largest coal reserves in the world. Canada has the tar sands, which have as much oil within them as Saudi Arabia currently has. And under the state of Colorado is shale oil in the United States that's locked away and is accessible, but at a cost that may in fact even dwarf the Canadian tar sands. So
isn't it amazing,
really
Curtis? I'm glad you mentioned the Colorado and what we have. You know, I'm wondering why they're not saying how much oil we in the United States have that is probably more than what they have in the Middle East.
Well, the conservative estimates that I've seen suggest that the shale oil locked away under the state of Colorado is at least as much as what Saudi Arabia currently has.
That's what I heard, but of course that story is buried. Thanks, Curtis.
I got to just mention one last thing.
Quick.
Hey, last August, do you remember a yeshiva, Jewish student, who was arrested in, I believe it was Florida, for calling in a bomb threat in order to delay a flight of a plane?
Definitely.
Okay. Today, this is what he was sentenced today. He was sentenced today. This is a terrorist act that he committed to spend 6 months confined in his home.
Oh, wow.
And to perform 200 hours of community service, and get this, to pay a $1,000 fine. Now that is an act of terrorism, and had it have been anybody else other than a Jew,
of course,
excuse me, if it had been anybody else, it would have been front page. You won't hear about this on television.
Of course.
But yet his name is Chesco Wells of Miami Beach.
Gotta go, Curtis.
All right, bye.
Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, next week we're going to have two great guests with us. Don Wagner and Henry Macau will be our guests for next week. So we will see you next Tuesday, 6:30. Tell all your friends. Good night. See you then.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Horn, and I'm with the Lafayette